start there, which is Benita. What did you think of Team Liquid? I mean, on paper, this is supposed to be like something of a super team or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, they just very underwhelming. Didn't show up. I don't know why or what had happened. But yeah, just didn't show up at all.
What about some of the players on that team? Are there some that you actually hold in high esteem? Is there a reason why you would think they would do well?
I mean, honestly, I think that Redguard like just didn't have like I think he's one of their stars and he just didn't show up like at all. And you know, people can have bad matches, people can have bad tournaments, bad lands, it happens. So I'm just gonna chalk it off as like a one time thing, you know.
Sure. What do you think, Gio? What went wrong?
So I remember I watched the game that they played against Evil Geniuses, and I think that the way that Team Liquid play, now I obviously don't watch a lot of EMEA, so I don't know if this is how they usually play or if this is just how they played at Tokyo, but I assume that it's indicative of their normal way of playing. I found that the way that they played at Tokyo was almost exactly the play style that like a team like Evil Geniuses countered really well. You know, for example, they're really slow on their engages. And the problem is when you go against a team like those teams that ended up in the top 3, so it's not just Evil Geniuses, but Fnatic and Paper Rex are both the sorts of teams that are going to be able to counter this really well just in their natural way of playing, is that if you're really slow, you're basically just going to end up funneling yourself into this onslaught of utility that won't end from your opponent. And especially if they're really good at managing their utility well to last. So it's not like you can kind of burst them down in one go or anything like that. And so they just end up kind of putting themselves into this position where they don't have a lot of time to be able to do a really well planned out engage because they've left so much time to actually make their engage. And then in order to actually do that, they're just like going into just an absolute fucking shit show. I don't know, like a garbage can. I think that also, I wasn't super impressed with their post plants. I feel like their ability to take like duels in post plant situations was a bit lackluster compared to some of their opponents. And it was just kind of things like that, which is like, you know, you could see like players like Nat, and it always comes down to Nats, right? But like players like Nats, like really trying hard and doing their role pretty well. And actually it was very interesting because this was another one of those teams where I think it was really indicative of the region they come from, just compositionally. You know, you'd always see Nats on something like a Cypher, for example, whereas the North American teams would be bringing Killjoys. So you've kind of got the differences that come from that. And you would have these individuals like Nats who would kind of be doing his job well, but you can only do so much if you're one guy, especially if you're taking on that role where you're doing a lot of the lurking and you're doing, you know, this sentinel role and whatever. So I just kind of felt like a lot of these key components of what you need to be able to do in Valorant at the moment, they weren't like awful at, they just weren't good enough at, or they did it in
like
a way
region
that was
diff. Yeah, like it was basically a region diff, like just the gameplay in general and just everything. It just seems like they were not up to par on it, you know?
Yeah. They ran, so like for example, on their first map that they played against EG, which was in on Fracture, you know, they did the kind of like the double controller, which is still really popular in a lot of these EMEA compositions, versus like the double initiator that EMEA brought out, which is really facilitating of this kind of more kind of like aggressive, or like I don't even, aggressive makes it sound mindless, but like very confident, very coordinated style that you're seeing from teams like EG, like Paper Rex, and like Fnatic. And yeah, it was very like set up for just being more slow and extremely defaulty, but like being really defaulty only gets you so far if you're not actually working off of like the information that you're getting on that default within the first minute of the round, you know? Like,
Yeah, well, double controller is a really different gameplay, and on Fracture in NA at least, like that is not a thing. Like
Yeah.
we just don't do that. It's a completely different game plan.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.